Greetings and welcome back to another fabulous installment of Mgtow Talks. Today I'm here with the renowned Cultane, High Warden of the Penal Colony and Master Cane-Tone Smiter, to talk about the famous and unrelenting topic of anti-feminism. So, welcome back, High Warden of the Penal Colony, Cultane.
Howdy. How's it going?
We are live, and this is presumably a good thing, depending on your definition. That is, if you're not an antinatalist. No, just kidding. Get the reference to my previous video. Anyway, we're going to be talking about anti-feminism, which is this topic that never seems to die from a different perspective, hopefully. I think, for the point of clarification, when we talk about anti-feminism, we're not talking about people who think that feminism is a bunch of bunk. That is to say, neither of us believe that feminism is an accurate depiction of human reality. By that definition, everyone is an anti-feminist. There's something more to it. So what do you think, to begin with, what do you think makes that into, well, what does that entail in your assessment? What does a person who is an actually declared anti-feminist do?
Well, I mean, as far as I can see, they sort of attribute most of the issues between the genders that exist today to that ideological philosophy of feminism. To me, I think it is much more likely that feminism is an emergent movement of something that's going on below the surface at the biological level. Well, primarily, I think this conversation has sprung up because of well, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff going on, but the conversation you and I are having right now is primarily being arranged because of the recent video conversation between Sargon of Akkad and Mgtow, who are anti-feminist. There is actually some clarification to be made on that I'm sure we'll get to later. But yeah, I mean, those two guys, it's probably worth putting in a disclaimer that, anything I say about those two guys, if they end up watching this video, it's none of this is personal. I'm subscribed to both people, really like their stuff, but there's a few things they do in that particular video that I think need to be talked about. Specifically, that there are a number of occasions where they get very close to the sort of biological ultimate causes of these problems, but then sort of dance around the subject. I mean, there's even one part where I think Sargon is talking about the innate female in-group preference.
The
That,
Borg consensus, yes.
Well, I mean, you can say Borg
That's
consensus.
my term, of course, yeah.
That's your term. I mean, to keep it in terms of science and all of that, because there is actually legitimate psychological studies on this that show a strong female in-group preference and actually an out-group preference for men. Men will side with women rather than other men. And, Sargon talks about this fact, and he starts off by saying, oh, there's a certain type of woman that, and then he stops himself and then he says, it's possibly actually it is all women. And then he goes,
if I recall, he says he doesn't like to gender. He corrects himself in that excerpt, but that's a different spot. Okay.
That's at the very start. He says, I don't like to gender things, but, and then goes on to, this is later in the video.
Well, okay. So let's talk about the core fundamental problem that might exist, well, certainly exists within the context of the conversation between Lord Akkad and the Lord of Long Island, Mgtow, but also extends to most anti-feminists who are essentially engaged in a business. We can talk about the business aspects of it later. That is, they're clearly intelligent men. So we have to ask the fundamental question: what is preventing them from calling the spade the spade? Why are they dancing around the topic, and why do so many of these so-called anti-feminists dance around the topic and never try to hit the nail on the head? I don't actually want to presume to know their motivations. Could it be because they fear offending their audience, particularly the female sector? Could it be that they're just unaware and they just don't know that there's actually, for
No,
example, an in-group female preference? I mean,
no,
it's an
they
open
know.
question.
There's actually, I mean, it actually goes deeper than that. There's a section in the video where Mgtow actually says, people say I'm an anti-feminist and I'm not actually, an anti-feminist. Like his exact words, I think after that was something to the effect of, nobody at all has a problem with the first wave feminists. And for the most part, nobody has a problem with the second wave feminists. All the problem is with this third wave that's popped up.
Which is the most
Micro,
gimmicky version of it all. But
yeah. Well, the issue I have with that is that that is patently incorrect, and Micro knows that because I've watched a video of Micro's, and we can link it in the low bar with the time code so people can watch it.
right.
But he actually, in one of his videos, he addresses the suffragettes and specifically the fact that the the suffragettes, while they were fighting for the right to vote, but they absolutely did not want to extend those rights to the working class servant women who they
Oh,
employed.
no, it was an upper absolutely the feminism. I mean, and this of let's clarify this. I mean, I've talked about this in previous videos, and this is absolutely clear for anyone who wants to take the time to investigate. The thesis that I posit, that Barbarossa posits as well, that feminism wouldn't be possible without the Industrial Revolution, the technological advancements, and the comfort that ensued as a result of these things,
Yeah,
specifically within that social stratum. I mean, it's
yeah,
indicative in the fact that first wave feminism is almost entirely upper class women. That is, the women
yeah.
who were having it good, not the women who were still hand washing things and grinding it out day and day, doing laborious work in the house. And it's for everyone to see there.
Hmm. I mean, my issue in this case specifically is that Micro has actually done videos on this. He knows that the first wave feminist movement was not all about suffrage. There was other stuff going on. The suffragettes, the middle and upper class suffragettes, didn't want the working class women to have those rights. There was other stuff going on at that time. I mean, the first wave was pretty much where you started seeing things like the Tender Years Doctrine. I mean, Micro knows this. And the second wave as well. Like, I mean, if you're looking at the issue, equal pay for equal work, don't have a problem with it. But to equate that one issue with the entire second wave, he's essentially saying, oh, the second wave, all those people like Valerie Solanas, Andrea Dworkin, Susan Brown Miller, Mary Daly, the list goes on. Like,
No fault divorce was probably, in my own opinion, one of the most prominent and impactful features of second wave feminism. I mean,
yeah,
it totally changed the game.
I don't even necessarily have a problem with no fault divorce. I
Well,
mean, if
I,
people
I,
want it,
I don't have a problem with it per se. I mean, since marriage was never something that interested me anyway. But certainly, without men being empowered with some knowledge of their own
I have a
natures
problem with.
go on, please, Lord Coltane.
I mean, my issue with no fault divorce. I mean, if two people want to get divorced, I mean, have at it. My problem is more the things like
Oh,
alimony
right. Well, yes,
surrounding that
obviously,
whole
yeah. I mean, I think
the
most people,
unfair side of it,
right?
really. But
Ideally, no fault divorce should be a little different than a breakup in a conventional relationship where no one is allocated anything. You just break up and you deal with it and you move on. That's
yeah,
not what it is. And this has been talked about probably a million times already. But it's all of the goodies without any of the responsibility, basically.
yeah. Which
But
again is kind of what was going on at the suffragette time as well. I mean,
no,
you got
absolutely. And then in
the
second wave,
suffragettes they took a break from campaigning for suffrage to hand out white feathers to men, knowing that they'd never have to serve.
yeah, yeah. And
It's
I
it's
think
it's
I honestly think that they're amongst prominent anti-feminists, and Sargon, Lord Sargon is a pretty by now a pretty prominent one. This would also include a guy like Mundane Matt, who I actually don't watch at all, but I'm occasional
I
videos.
I, I watch Mundane Matt
Okay, okay,
more for his gaming news than anything else. I
right,
get
right.
most of my
But all of these
um,
guys, I believe, this is my own hypothesis, live in terror of being branded with the idea or the accusation of somehow equating feminists to women in general. And, we saw this in the earlier days of the online manosphere community where the slogan would be repeated, feminism is an ideology and women are women and they're separate, and as
yeah.
if there were no connection between the two. And I think they want to maintain this false dichotomy, because to entertain the thought and even acknowledge it is to say that things go a little bit deeper. We're getting at the roots of things, and there could be a number of reasons why they don't want to go that far. They don't want to offend people. They want to keep this somehow gender neutral when it's impossible. And in the case of Lord Akkad, or Lord Sargon, I don't really blame him. But I mean, this is how he makes his living by arguing with feminists. By now, as an aside, I spent last
I
night looking for his older history videos, and I couldn't find a single one. Apparently, according to my friend, he deleted them. He used to only make those. So he has this channel, which is based off of this historical Mesopotamian king of the 5th century, I believe, or 3rd. I think I might be wrong about that, or 4th. And the entirety of his body of work is just anti-feminism. You know?
I don't know about that. I mean, Sargon, I think, has said a couple of times that he does actually have a day job.
Okay, okay. Well, that's fair enough. I don't know all the details, and I once incorrectly labeled him as a conservative when he's not. But
Mm.
I think part of the problem is to acknowledge that there's a deeper problem, that you cannot really talk about feminism without talking about female nature, and indeed male nature as a reaction to it.
Yeah,
You're
and
good.
the problem is that they do talk about that in the video between Micro and Sargon. They talk about, I mean, putting it in terms that they use. Sargon explicitly mentions the female in-group bias on a number of occasions, and even goes as far at one point to say it probably does to some degree pertain to all women, right? Micro, when they're talking about white knights, Micro actually says that that is largely due to an innate sort of desire for men to protect women, etc. I mean, you could essentially frame the entire feminist movement in those terms. Like, I think Sargon's exact words were, women, a specific type of woman gets, one woman gets criticized and another woman gets offended on her behalf because they're also a woman, right?
Indeed.
It's
And
it's essentially, you could frame feminism as, you know, one woman gets attacked walking home at night, therefore all women are under attack.
yeah, I
I
would
mean,
agree.
you pretty much hear that all the time. I mean,
with
that was
with men
Susan.
chiming in to protect them from the attacks.
Yeah, those two things that both of those guys admit are sort of innately gendered behaviors of the human ape could essentially be used to frame how feminism operates.
And now I
So
remember what Sargon says at the end of that, and then he's just sort of he backtracks and says, I just don't know."
yeah, he's like, he says, I don't know why. And I'm like, come on, you were so close. You were so close to actually touching on the ultimate cause instead of this. I mean, this is one of the things as well, is that I don't think it's because they're scared of being called misogynist, because that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of those guys have been labeled that. Um, and I don't think it's because they're, trying to make money from it. I mean, I don't think Micro or probably Sargon make even close to enough to
Not my
to
guru, Sargon
to
possibly.
live
I
on.
don't know, but yeah,
I think Mundane Matt probably makes enough to. He's got a big enough viewer base that it would supplement his income. But again,
Sargon has
he's
more
not
subs
really.
than Monday Minute, though. Interestingly
Does he
enough,
get as many views?
that I
Like
do not
Mundane
know.
Matt, yeah, Mundane Matt pumps out sort of a couple of videos a day.
Right.
But he's not primarily anti-feminist. His is more gaming and movie news for the most part.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess at the intentions of dancing around the subject, there's a proximate and an ultimate cause, and the proximate cause is, I think they're banking on winning the battle politically. And if you're going from a political angle, you have to appeal to the mainstream, which I think is why they're, you know, not only that feminism is something that it's a political ideology that can be changed, but, you know, even this thing of leeway on the first and second wave feminists, oh, it's just the third wave. It seems to me to be a political maneuver to appeal to the widest possible audience.
And ultimately?
Ultimately, if I think if I could relate an anecdote about a conversation I had with a friend a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about women in STEM, specifically women in engineering, and I brought up the point that people tend to gravitate towards what they're good at. People enjoy doing what they're good at. And I pointed out that there are numerous studies, and my friend admitted that he was aware of this. There are numerous studies that show, from a cognitive standpoint, men are better at conceptualizing objects in 3D space. And obviously these things, you know, they grade on the classic, you know, disclaimer about generalizations. These things grade on a curve. So you're going to get some men that are crap at conceptualizing 3D space and some women that are going to be good at it. But at the aggregate level, men are better at conceptualizing things in 3D space. Now, hypothetically, if engineering is a profession where that innate ability to conceptualize 3D objects is going to give you an edge, lacking that ability is going to put you at a disadvantage. Are we, like, from that biological standpoint, are we ever likely to see parity in the field of engineering? And at that point, my friend said, well, that may be true, but we want women to go into engineering. It's kind of like an argument from consequences, you know. And I think that's where this sort of thing comes from as well.
Stephen,
I think one of the,
if I may, Steven Pinker brings this up in his book, The Blank Slate. He actually cites a woman, a female academic, who says, you know, maybe women don't want to go into these fields. And therein lies the absurdity. If women don't want to occupy STEM fields and positions there, trying to artificially inflate the ranks, it makes no sense. There will always be some small number of women who may or may not want to go into STEM field or are capable, but it's the task itself.
I mean, the issue is actually compounded from that, because if you start implementing quotas, like what the EU has, where, I mean, they've said 40%, I think.
Particularly in Germany now, they're actually official what's called the woman quota that companies have to employ such percent. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm just going to, for the sake of quote equality, I'm just going to round that number up to 50% and say, even if you had quotas that 50% of engineering hires had to be women, right? What positions would they fill? If they are fundamentally, like, at the aggregate level, if women are not as good at conceptualizing 3D space, are they going to go into the higher paying design engineering jobs or the lower paying maintenance engineering jobs? You can force that quota within, to get women into engineering, but once you have 50% of women in engineering, I suspect you would still see a gender differential of which engineering roles men and women filled. The point is, though, that my friend had it, like, I pointed all this out and my friend basically said, yeah, but we want women to go into these roles. We have all of these really smart women, and the more engineers we have, the better. So it would make sense to encourage women to do that. I mean, to me, that's an argument from consequences. You may want more women in engineering, but it doesn't necessarily make it the case. And I think that's the ultimate cause of this feminism debate too, because if it is feminism, if it is politics, politics can be changed. But as soon as you admit that there are problems of innate biology going on, the ability to change that situation becomes a lot more difficult.
He is too smart to not realize that this political thing is a futile battle, which is why it leads me to believe that there's nothing wrong with this. He's trying to make a career out of arguing with feminists, more or less. There's nothing wrong, as I said, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want your job to be. It's just that you seem to be positing that the reason why he doesn't, take the final step is to do so would be to acknowledge the unfeasibility of political action. I think he probably acknowledges that. In fact, I've talked about this before. One thing that his approach does, and I made the analogy of opening magical portals to the nether realms, and then they close by themselves, but you can artificially, through sacrifice, keep them open. By constantly giving feminists the attention that they actually need in order to stay quote-unquote relevant, he is feeding the cycle. He's keeping the portal artificially open, which is why I also think it's not just because he thinks he's fighting some righteous political battle and which can be won. But that's just my interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, I want to give him the most charitable interpretation I can. I get all I really have to go on is his videos online, and I do get the impression that he either does believe or he wants to believe that it's politically based and it's an ideology that can be changed. I just, as you say though, I mean, he is a smart guy. I mean, he's heavily involved. As an example, he's heavily involved in Gamergate.
Yeah.
And I think possibly, I mean, to be fair, Gamergate has made some leeway against certain groups they're in opposition to. The problem is that I think, and I don't know if Sargon is one of these people, but a lot of people I've heard on the Gamergate side seem to attribute this to the political activism of it, that people are waking up and realizing that the social justice thing is, it's not good, and it's a terrible ideology, and they're hypocrites and stuff. I don't think any of the leeway that Gamergate has actually, I don't think any of the ground that Gamergate has gained is on the basis of changing people's minds ideologically.
Yeah. I think you're onto something. And they actually mentioned that in the video, if I recall, and I don't remember exactly where, but the reality of Gamergate, at least partially, is that when the feminists, the Tumblr feminists and what have you, decided to attack the gaming world, they really opened up a can of worms because, frankly, there's so much money in it. Developers make a shit ton of money off of games. I spend more money on games probably than anything else, and I'm someone who lives pretty minimalist. I mean, so you have just lots of money in it, and ruining an equation that works is not something that anyone involved wants.
Yeah, I don't, basically when you look at the leeway that's gained, the money that Gawker have lost, the fact that recently the Escapist went and changed a whole bunch of its staff, I don't think any of the individual minds have been changed. What happened was that, an industry that was dependent on, the game journalism industry, and I say that with scare quotes, the games journalism industry is fundamentally dependent on gamers to survive. So when you turn around and tell your primary target demographic that they're dead to you, I mean, that is a bad business decision, and they lost a lot of money on it.
Money talks.
money talks. I don't think any of the major ground gained in Gamergate is down to ideological argument. I think
Precisely,
it's all
and
all down to money.
and all the more reason why that success, if you want to call it that, cannot be transposed to the actual political sphere, politics, government, day-to-day
Mm,
affairs, because they're really completely separate things. I mean, the gaming world is a world unto itself,
mm,
and that therein I see the futility of what they're doing. I don't, as I said, I don't want to. I don't actually know Sargon of Akkad's motivations. We're both hypothesizing and guessing. I know far less about Micro, either other than he's a New Yorker, sort of at least.
I,
And
I actually I love Microw's stuff. I've actually been subscribed to him since almost day one. Back when he used to make these funny little Ingsoc style propaganda films about the People's Republic of Atheist Skeptistan.
right, right.
I'd actually highly suggest. I love his stuff, and anyone who's not subscribed to him, I'd highly suggest going and checking out his stuff because it's definitely worth watching if for no other reason than the lols.
I think
Um,
though that there's some just inherent resistance within anti-feminism, if you want to call it a cohesive movement, to go to the biological level. Now, I mean, cite the numerous times I've had conversations with Girl Rights Watch and actual conversations that have been recorded and uploaded, or her making comments, or her making videos separately, where when she starts talking about the biological underpinnings of all this, the audience just seems to go deaf and doesn't pay attention, or they just gloss over it. I don't know what. So even in her case, where she has being female, she has some sort of leeway and freedom in addressing this,
yeah.
more so than a male, sort of. People just tend to go blank and go back to all the other stuff. And I am in agreement with you that if you acknowledge that there's something core biological about this, then political
Mm,
solutions seem, well, they're not going to happen.
yeah.
That's why I'm not one of these conventional anti-feminists. I mean, obviously, do I think feminism is an accurate depiction of reality? Well, no. One thing that feminism actually gets, I think, and the reason why it exists, I think Barbarossa said it. I'm paraphrasing in an older video. He said, you see,
Social thermite.
yeah, I think he was quoting Dworkin. I don't remember exactly which one. It was one of his many excellent videos. He said something to the effect of, you see, feminists understand the differences between the sexes much better than say MRAs or anti-feminists do for the most part. I mean, feminists are right that they understand that there are differences, and they understand that for the most part in aggregate they have a disadvantage compared to men as far as earnings concerned and what have you. And on the other hand, they don't want to do the old-fashioned proxy power thing. They want a kind of not a direct tap into it, but a more direct than the conventional. I'm the wife and I can control the household sort of thing. So they do go about it a different way.
I
But
would say they want the direct, but they also don't want to give up the background power
well,
either.
yeah, but the feminists do recognize that there are differences now,
Mm,
and the important thing about the biological underpinnings of it all is simply that even I mean both of them acknowledge, and I think we all can acknowledge that Anita Sarkeesian is not she's a fraud. I mean she's not
yeah,
an ideological feminist. She's someone who studied Edward Bernays and marketing
yeah,
techniques, and she knows how to make a buck. Okay, that's great. Good for her. I think that's completely irrelevant. All third wave feminists could be an Anita Sarkeesian. I'm not saying they are, but they could be. But
well,
the
I think a
biological
lot of the I think a lot of the prominent ones are. I mean, I mean,
yeah,
you look at a
well
lot of
that's my
the
whole point. The biological underpinnings that support feminism, the the skeleton, if you will, I mean, that's there. So whether they're actually advocating the stuff or they're just doing it to make some moolah
mm,
is irrelevant because you're going up against the framework, and the framework is something that's ingrained in all of us. Men white
yeah,
knighting and kowtowing, and women
yeah,
thinking that an attack on one is an attack on all.
yeah.
So that's
Well,
why.
yeah, and I mean that is at the core of it. That is, if I don't know, I doubt Sargon or Micah will probably watch this video all the way through, but if either of them do and either of them get this far, I mean, my primary question to them, which I'd really be interested in, is hypothetically, like just hypothetically, if those things are true, like if in a if these things are rooted in biology, like the female in-group preference and the male desire to, appear suitable to women, if those things are rooted in biology and in a post-industrial, post-birth control world, that is how the male and female human ape are inclined to interact with each other through a series of, women taking advantage of men in that way and men essentially white knighting and supplicating to that. How do you change that? Like, if that hypothetically, if those things are biological rather than ideological, what do you do then?
Not much. I mean, that's my stance, obviously, that there's not much I can do. I mean, recently we have the revelation from the Lord of Edmonton, this Nick guy from Men's Rights Edmonton, whatever that is,
Yeah.
saying that basically he does the thing to sort of get revenge and because he, gets his rocks off of arguing with feminists. Man, I can't really argue against that if that's what he wants to
Yeah, I
do.
mean, I suppose that's a legitimate. I don't know, you know, I don't know that revenge is something that I necessarily.
No, I mean, if that's what gives him pleasure, whatever. I mean, at least he's honest about it.
Yeah,
But
and I mean, I know some people as well that, I mean, particularly in the atheist community, just enjoy arguing with people online about religion.
yeah,
I mean, they're not expecting to convert anyone. They just enjoy
yeah,
having
yeah, they're people. They're
debates
people who
with.
enjoy it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
and if they want to do that, that's fine. And I'm not
yeah,
sure if that's Sargon of Akkad or not. I can't really say either way. But I think that coming from the Lord of Edmonton was pretty revealing
mm.
because he also said, I don't care about men. I think a lot of people had issue with that. Now I can say for
Well,
myself,
given the guy's organization is called Men's Rights
yeah, yeah.
Edmonton.
I mean, I'm not even. I can't see the things. I care about men, but I'm also not dumb enough to think I can change the world. I mean, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to have an impact on the world. At best, it seems at least the case that I might have an impact on an individual man watching a video or what have you. But I can't change the world. And given what we know about what's going on, the biological roots, and I just don't see people changing en masse. I mean, it's a futile battle. They are these guys, these anti-feminists. They're sort of the dog chasing their own tail. There's not going to be an end to it until they just drop dead. And that's just something myself I don't want to participate in. I will occasionally talk about these issues, but it's certainly from an outside perspective. I'm not. It's a complete waste of time arguing whether they're actually ideological feminists or not. People like Anita Sarkeesian and all the rest of them. And I'm
Mm.
not sure what it accomplishes, especially when you just dance around the issues. And the few times, as I mentioned, the few times someone like Girl Writes What, Karen Strawn, actually brings this biological stuff up, it's ignored and it's skimmed over. So,
Yeah,
what
well,
what?
actually, I mean, I really loved her earlier videos
No, we
about
all
like
did.
neoteny and stuff like that. I mean, that was really solid Evo Psych, basics on,
I've been trying to get a
you know,
conversation with her, but she hasn't responded. She's hard to get a hold of these days, but I'm still working on that. Hopefully, I will. But yeah, I think we all did. And she stopped. I don't know the reasons. Maybe she's really busy. She does have various offspring that she has to take care of or watch over. I don't know. But yeah, I think everyone liked that stuff, and for a lot of people, a lot of those videos were the most eye opening. It really opened people's eyes up.
mm,
The Honey Badger Radio, on the other hand, it's a horrible production. I can't even listen to it.
yeah.
It's awful.
I I listened to a few episodes, and it essentially is just four people um, sort of accidentally talking over the top of each other. Not even in a malicious, angry sort of way. They don't. Back when I used to listen to a couple of episodes, they'd take calls which were usually pretty stupid questions, and then the four of them would accidentally step on each other's sentences. You couldn't really make heads or tails half of the time of what they were trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. And recently, this was in the comment section of, I believe, part 5 of Razor Blade Candy's video, Why Men's Rights Will Fail. There was a this is resulted in hundreds of comments. I don't know the exact details because there were too many comments to read through, but I know in the past that Karen Strawn has taken flack for being, and this is using air quotes, a traditionalist. And I think her position was misrepresented. I mean, I actually share a position. I mean, it was basically that most people aren't Spock, and most people, and this is a position I expressed in my old video that I got attacked for by Paul Elam. Men won't change.
Yeah.
We are on this biological cruise control, and most people aren't Spock. I mean, even, the other day we were talking, and I shocked you with how little social contact I have. I mean, I'm a really extreme example. But most people can't get over these biological compunctions, and most people are not engaged in rational thinking. And I think when Girl Rights What describes certain things, it's really merely descriptive. I mean, I've never seen her as anything but an advocate, essentially an advocate for going your own way, because there just aren't any better alternatives. What she has said is, and I don't necessarily agree with it in every detail, that traditionalism is less bad than feminism because men get quote unquote respect. And we can argue whether that's completely illusory. I might argue that it's partially illusory. And I would add to that, and I wish she would have added to that, because I think they're from the misunderstanding that there are a lot of men whose psychological well-being and overall wellness is derived from that. They have no other means of feeling okay about themselves in the world other than this model of, let me do something for a woman. Oh, I feel good. Let me do something for society, i.e. women's, multiple women, and I feel good. And we can't really get past that, and most men are just stuck to that. And so in that sense, you could say traditionalism is better because these guys can't move past that. Now, people would argue against that because some people, I think Multi-Shadows commonly believe that, Mgtow is not a Spock phenomenon. Well, first off, Mgtow are diverse. I think I'm a Spock phenomenon, and I say this, believe it or not, in a tone of neutrality. I don't think it's good or bad. It is what it is. But there are many, you are a sunder of vaginal crevices, and so, and there are many other sunders of vaginal crevices still going your own way. And so you walk a line between the two worlds. And so I do think that you need at least some sort of ability to derive enjoyment, contentment outside of the conventional, let me do something for women and or society, and they're synonymous in this context. And some men just can't do it. They can't do it, period.
Well, I would say, I mean, my position on it would be, as I said before, like most biological things, these behaviors grade on a curve. I would say Stardust is pretty far off the center of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for most people, we are social animals, and there's a lot of studies that if people don't have the social contact they need, it can actually be quite psychologically unhealthy for them.
See, folks, this is why I'm a psychopath. Just kidding.
Yeah, well, no, I mean these things, and I mean I have a small group of friends that are quite close, and other people I know have large groups of friends, and they're friends with everyone, and they kind of go out a couple of nights a week with different people. There's varying degrees of how much social contact a person needs. I think the trick is to be aware of that and don't, as the High Lord of Biochemistry said, emotions. Emotions?
Emotions are a useful servant, but a terrible master. Yeah.
Terrible master. So I mean, I think social contact is psychologically healthy for most people, but at the same time, be aware of what that actually means and don't be a supplicating simp.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I could see social contact as useful, but most of the time, I've explained this a couple of times privately, I see it as burdensome. I mean, I
Mm.
like to have conversations that I feel I can profit from, and just meeting up with someone and going over, yeah, work was cool, and oh, this is a nice restaurant, and okay, but it just seems like an expenditure of energy I would just prefer not to engage in. And most conversations for me in the real world are gonna line up well along those lines, and so it just seems to me a waste. Now, that's not to say that there won't be situations in the future where I'm forced into those sorts of conversations, and then I'll participate because I have to. But
Yeah.
honestly, I I don't really notice a huge difference. If anything, as I said, my level of homeostasis is greater. I feel more overall at ease than I did when I was still pursuing multitudes of social relationships with people that really were inconsequential and didn't really nourish my mind at all. And when I wonder, at least retrospectively, why I even bothered. I mean, so yeah, obviously I'm on the far end, but
Yeah.
so much socializing seems to go on just for the sake of socializing, and
Mm.
there's no doubt a lot of people benefit from that, but I'm not one of them. I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't go out of my way to, I mean, I obviously within the work environment and at the shops and stuff like that, you need to maintain a certain level of niceties with each other.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
But I'm probably, like I said, I've got a small group of friends, most of whom I've known since high school.
Yeah,
I haven't really gone out of my way to make new best friends forever or anything like
right.
that.
Well, in my
Um,
case, being an expat, having lived in so many different countries,
yeah,
it's that's part. I guess that's part of the game, the expat game, where you move around so much. You're different places. You meet people. You lose contact, and I think I explained this. You make an effort for a while, and at some point in time, you're just tired of making an effort with no reciprocity.
yeah,
And I think there's you can look at it in different ways, but going my own way, being a YouTube content producer of a certain kind of content with certain kinds of ideas,
mm,
there's just no way that I could maintain some of my social relationships with people at the status quo level they might have been, 5, 6 years ago or further back,
yeah,
without reinterpreting the basis of them and just seeing everything in a different light. Because looking back on it, I mean, I'm thinking about, I guess I have to call him a former friend of mine in London when I was living in London. Much of the meat of our conversation would revolve around, relationships and work. And it's just things that honestly, I can talk about them, but they're just not, I'd rather talk about other stuff.
yeah,
And, if the consequence of that is fewer people, fewer social contacts in my life, so be it. I'm willing to accept that. I because I don't. I try to make some effort not to be fake in my content, but also in real life. I don't want it's. I don't want to be dishonest to someone and pretend I'm actually interested in what they have to say when I'm not. And I think a lot of the social niceties we engage in can come down to that, be reduced to that.
yeah,
And yeah, but getting back to the main point, I think we've been led astray slightly.
yeah.
The
Slight divergence.
slight diversions. Well, it happens with all the cane toads out there. I know.
Yeah.
I'm just
Variations
fascinated by
on a
cane.
theme.
One day I'm going to make a video in honor of Australians about the cane toad problem. I actually will. I'm planning on. Not everyone will be interested, but the Australians will be. But
Mm,
yeah, I think people have been misunderstanding the High Lady of Edmonton in a way because, yeah, we talk about this fixed nature all the time, and not every
mm,
man is capable of even slightly, quote unquote, going his own way. Not every man wants that. And frankly speaking, in terms of psychological well-being, that's going your own way isn't even optimal for a lot of men. There are men who really depend on whose entire psychology and their entire, for that matter, probably biochemistry is dependent on this reciprocity between them doing stuff for society, women,
Yeah.
and it just that's how they work, and they can't get out of that. I don't
Yeah.
think everyone, just like everyone, not everyone can be a world-class sprinter or a basketball player or an astrophysicist. And I'm not necessarily likening the activities in terms of scale or, their loftiness. Not everyone can go his own way, and that's
No. Well, it doesn't even have to be as complicated as that. The same friend I was talking to about um, women in engineering a couple of weeks ago, just the other day, we had a discussion on the topic of fat shaming. Um, and he actually pointed out that there are most studies done on the subject basically say that people who are overweight, um, often drastically overweight, when they lose weight, something like 10% of people are able to maintain that weight loss after 5 years.
you
Um, and most of what it comes down to is motivation. That they get thin and then they kind of get lax on the exercise schedule and put all the weight back on.
mm,
Um, and it was actually funny because I'm out of the two of us, I'm the biological determinist. But yeah, I mean, I was saying, well, that's kind of to do with that's not like their body gets used to it and they keep exercising and the weight keeps coming back. Like, it's essentially within their ability to change,
mm.
but
Or
essentially
rather,
unless
not
if
within their ability to
yeah,
change. I've often,
but
it's funny
basically
you bring this
that's
up.
what he said was, and I agree with him because I'm a biological
I,
determinist.
I
But yeah, essentially it's a problem of motivation.
yeah,
They're not inclined
it's
towards.
speaking of which, I've always found it fascinating, these people who just rage on morbidly obese people, the really obese people, 150, 200 kilos, as if these
Yeah.
people actually wanted to look that way. I mean, I'm not. This is not me making excuses. It's that there's a there may actually not be fundamentally anything wrong with their bodies, but in terms of their neurology, there probably is, because
Yeah.
to get that to that level, and this
Hmm.
idea that they actually wanted to look this way, and I mean, look, as someone who, I mean, I'll acknowledge, I'm pretty much sugar addicted. I spend every day of my life resisting the urge to consume sugar. Yeah, it's quite literally a drug. At least it is for me, and I'm going to make a video about this later on. In fact, in many respects, it is a drug, and it is a tremendous battle. I walk past pastries, every day I have to fight against this urge. Every day, without exception, it's relentless. So
Hmm.
in my case, I have the neurology to with resist, but it is fucking hard as fuck. And all I need to do is go a step further, and sometimes I'll go for 2 weeks where I get overwhelmed, and I go on a sugar binge for 2 weeks, and then I have to then I fucking fast for an entire day or two, and I have to just
Yeah.
go back. I mean, I'm able to maintain that more or less, but there's some people, they might be missing that little bit in their neurology in their brain, and they can never do that. I mean, they're just overwhelmed by the temptation.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean, it's
unfortunate for them, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's somewhat related to something that I think High Lord of bio
chemistry. Yeah.
chemistry came very close to sort of saying, but didn't quite get to, which was because I think you guys roughly talked on, eating food in that as well, to do with motivations, and essentially it is that um, there is a there's a very close correlation between eating and getting pleasure. Um,
Yeah.
it's pleasurable to eat. The
Absolutely.
the the beneficial link between not eating so much or not eating so much food with such a high caloric content, and getting thinner is a very vague link.
Oh, for one thing, because it takes so long, it's not
Yeah.
enough. You know, it's not enough to even fast for 2 days. I mean, it
Mm.
takes weight loss, if you want it, fat loss, whatever you want to call it. That just takes a long time, and so it's a
Yeah.
huge investment. Whereas, I mean,
Yeah.
I know if I see that 70% dark chocolate with the orange bits in it, I'm just thinking, but
Yeah.
yeah, bad thoughts
But
right now.
yeah,
But
just from the standpoint of raw biological instincts, eating food and getting pleasure is it's much more direct than not eating food and getting thin.
yeah,
So
there's no. I think that's important to underpin here that there's no teleology in the instinctual, whereas an actual diet plan involves the teleological. That is, creating goals and purpose and for those, if you're not familiar with teleology, purposefulness, if you will, from the Greek word telos, end or goal. But there's nothing in that, and so that requires a move beyond the instinct. Now, and most of the time, I'm able to do that, but there's not a day that goes by where I'm just not overwhelmed by sugar temptation. And sometimes I do succumb to it because it's just, and so I mean, I know firsthand to some degree what these people who cannot resist are going through because every now and then I'm in a stage where I cannot resist, and then I get to the point where I think I'm reaching the breaking point. I need to correct this, and
yeah,
then the punitive measures ensue, and
yeah.
so it's
And I
it.
mean, I guess my problem with some of it is, on the one hand, yes, I can see how people in a world of high fructose corn syrup, where um, where an individual's motivation to eat, gives them direct pleasure. I can see how you would end up with an obesity problem. At the same time, there are people out there that do have the self-control to work. Like, I actually know a female bodybuilder. She doesn't have a shred of fat on her, like just zero fat. And, you know, the other side to that is I know how much work she puts into that. Like, she's a gym instructor, probably, God, she must do like 4 hours a day at the gym. Um, to say that she has thin privilege is a bit,
Oh well,
it's
I'm not.
it's it's not a privilege. It's hard fucking work.
Yeah, but
Um,
once again, I mean, I'm sort of in the middle here. I don't like using this term privilege. All that means is that she has the neurology that enables her to do
yeah,
that work, and not everyone has that. I mean, people often there's this thing that's persistent throughout society. This idea of, you know, hard work is admirable, and I think that's the general consensus. And
yeah,
laziness is despicable. Now, both of these are conditions of individual neurology, and they're different degrees to which people are lazy and hardworking. And just like there are different degrees to which people exercise and don't. So I don't look at, I mean, I wish everyone just get away with these, or just throw away these terms, privilege. This is all just, I don't like
yeah.
using these terms. But it's
Well,
just,
I mean, and then they're not even applied correctly anyway. Because if you look at what the definition of privilege is, I mean, who are the people that are getting extra welfare? Who are the people that are getting, quotas and affirmative action? Like, if you actually use the word privilege correctly, who is actually privileged?
and
who
speaking
who
of
has
which,
privileges within society.
I think this is an excellent time to break into this another topic they brought up about, I mean, you're a leftist, basically. You're a fucking leftist, Coltane, you evil bastard.
I it's difficult to say. I'm probably, I think Sargon has actually said this in
Yeah,
possibly
that's why I'm
even this
mentioning it, bringing
video.
it up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say because I think the UK and Australia are actually, as entire societies, are much more left leaning than America.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But let me.
with
So I
with
want to just give the pretext for bringing this up that Sargon has mentioned repeatedly in videos that it's difficult. Being left these days is difficult because even leftists are calling leftists right wingers.
yeah. Hmm.
And I suspect,
Well,
given your views, you would be called a right winger, even though in fact you're left leaning.
well, this is the thing. Like, these political leanings are somewhat relative. Americans would probably call me a filthy commie leftist, and I'd say many Australians would call me a conservative right winger. Um, I kind of see myself as being fairly centrist, at least as far as Australian politics go.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I when people ask me what I am, I actually tell them that I'm apolitical, for two reasons. The first one being that I don't think, my one vote is going to change a whole lot. I don't really put a great deal of stock in the popularity contest of democracy.
Right.
And the second reason is that I don't subscribe to any kind of broad political ideology. I mean, I have, um, on some issues I have libertarian leanings. On other issues I have socialist leanings. Like
Leftist.
I recently was in hospital and I didn't have to pay a cent. I like that. I like living
Leftist.
in a
Evil
society.
leftist.
Well, yeah. I
This
mean,
conversation shall cease now because you're an evil leftist.
well, this is maybe one of the things that we should possibly discuss as well as part of this whole feminist conversation is identity politics.
Mm.
Um, the fact is they go on both sides of the fence, and I think a lot of people don't even realize it. I was on a thread. I think it was one of Raging Golden Eagle's videos about the Sarkeesian effect, and
Mm.
as that whole thing was imploding, and Jordan Owen seemed to have absconded with all the money. Um, I basically mentioned on the video that I thought um, you know, it, it was possibly an indication that an internet aristocrat may have been correct in his rage quit video, that the people on the Gamergate side were really getting just as bad as the people they'd originally set out to take down. And somebody replied to that. I mean, I obviously meant when I said these people look like just as bad as the other side, I was specifically saying the Sarkeesian effect
Mm.
looks almost as bad as feminist frequency, for example.
Mm.
But this guy chimed in on the comments thread and he said, "We're not like the other side. We have, freedom on our side, and they have censorship." And I'm like,
Mm.
do you not realize how identity politics, based in identity politics, that is? Because if you ask somebody on their side of it, they would say almost the exact same thing in reverse, that they were on the side of freedom and this commenter was on the side of discrimination.
Well,
Like,
tons of allegedly right-leaning channels, do a lot of censorship. I mean, I almost, despite what people believe or claim, I don't delete comments unless they're incitements to real serious violence, and I've had a couple of those. Like, let's run around and murder fucking women and tear them apart with swords, and it's just I want to avoid trouble that might, to be honest, arise from that. But other than that, I mean, lots of negative shit, lots of criticism. It's all there for people to see. But
yeah,
ironically, people like Rocky Mystery, sometimes called Blocking Mystery, Chapin, the rest of the traditional champions of the right in the manosphere. I mean, these guys are
yeah,
censorship crazy. They love it.
yeah. But I mean, I'm not even talking about the act of censorship. Like, the
Mm.
thing I found interesting was that this particular commenter's response to that was, you know, we're not the same. I mean, I wasn't even referring to him or Gamergate as a whole specifically, like, Jordan Owen and Davis Aurini
Mm.
versus Macintosh and Sarkeesian. But he kind of took it personally, and he's like, we're not the same because, we're on the side of freedom and they're on the side of tyranny and censorship. And I'm like, that that is such an identity based thing. And like I said, the other side would say exactly the same thing about you. And then when I said that, I got a one sentence response that I should go and learn more about politics.
Yeah.
But it's that thing where,
Mm.
if you still don't agree with them, it's obviously
You don't know
because
enough about politics.
you're ignorant.
Yeah, that's
If
I've
you
been
if you
accused of
don't
this all the time, constant. You don't know anything about politics. That's why you decline to comment on it. No, it's not based on ignorance. I just,
yeah,
politics is a filter through which all these other innate human,
yeah,
instinctual, biological things are projected. And so, why focus on a filter when you can focus on the thing being projected through the filter?
yeah. But
And
I mean,
so,
I see it as a large problem from the anti-feminist point of view, though, because feminism at its core is essentially a movement of identity politics.
Mm.
It's about women. And when you attack that, I mean, there is some truth, I guess, from the standpoint that feminism tries to tout the fact that it speaks for all women. It is an identity movement about women, and when you criticize feminism, you criticize all women, I guess.
Mm.
And I mean, there are problems with trying to attack that, and there are also problems with becoming what you were hoping to attack. I mean, that was essentially what sort of happened with AVFM. They really have become an identity movement, and they're relying on cheap tricks like, the number of women that get elevated to key positions in that organization to say things that, I mean, Razorblade Candy's probably covered it a lot better than what I could, but I see problems on both sides. Well, I suppose on like on the Mgtow or men's rights side of things, the waste of time it is arguing with identity politics, and B, the problems inherent with essentially resorting to identity politics yourself.
Well, I mean, Barbarossa has in fact argued that men should practice identity politics. I actually have no position here. I mean, I'm not apartisan so much as I'm apolitical, despite what people believe. I just don't want to. I just want to get past all that fluff. I want to talk about other stuff. But I think at least as far as Barbarossa's arguing that point, within the context of how the system works, if you don't go identity, if you don't, I'm not saying it's actually realistic and you could get something done. How else are you going to get it done? You see the continued failure of limit the government, shrink the government. And this is going to go on forever, probably.
Yeah.
And the success, and obviously they have biology on their side of women and feminism and what have you, and everyone engages in identity politics, and to some degree, I guess there's some sense of nobility in not doing so. But if you want to get anything done, then you're probably going to end up having to do that.
And I mean,
Go on.
well, I guess that comes down to the fundamental divide that's been sort of widening between Mgtow and MRAs for quite some time now, is that you only have to resort to identity politics if you want to change this fundamentally broken system. If you want to play the political game, you have to resort to that. If you're happy to just walk off the plantation.
Yeah, and I think that's the position I'm in. Even if I were to become more reconnected with society and more involved, I just don't really have an ear or a taste for politics anymore. I'm always interested in the underlying causes more than what happened, the after effects. And so, yeah, and that's probably the reason why I've never been involved in any of this MRA stuff and never called myself that, and just have no interest. And these days, of course, even less of an interest in all of that stuff. I recognize that my videos are very nichey, and there's only a certain kind of man that they're going to appeal to, and I'm totally cool with that. I mean, most of my commenters I appreciate, and my subs. So, and I'm just, I look at what I'm doing is sort of a journey towards knowledge, and a lot of my subs I think have that same perspective on things. So, that's totally cool with me. Anything beyond that, beyond that journey to knowledge about the world and humanity and cane toads, yeah, it's just I have it's just it's pointless, as you said. I mean, it's just broken. What are you going to do? But there's another thing. I mean, in order to get popular, you have to play along those lines, right?
Yeah.
You have to gauge in the fakery. You have to pretend. I
Yeah.
mean, if put it this way, if Sargon of Akkad were saying the kinds of things I'm saying or Barbaros is saying, there's just no way he would have what 80,000 subs. It wouldn't be happening.
No. I mean, to get back to that, that's one of the things that they mentioned towards the end of the video is the best way to deal with people like Brianna Wu and Jonathan McIntosh is to essentially play the same identity politics game, but make it about class rather than gender. That, Brianna Wu's parents gave her $200,000, and Jonathan McIntosh's father has some fantastic holiday mansion and I can't remember where. But yeah, if you make it about class rather than gender, these people running the social justice movement are incredibly, quote, privileged people. But
They're lucky.
yeah, I mean they're yeah.
I wish people would start using the word lucky instead of privilege. I think it's a term that's much more honest and actually describes things in a better way. Lucky.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just simply use that word because, I mean, if you're beating these people at their own game, they use the term
Yeah,
privilege.
yeah. But I
There's
mean,
a lot of words that get
one thing
mixed
that the aristocrat, the internet, before he made his exit, mentioned, what he and Sargon of Akkad responded to this, was that he sort of decried the monetary issues.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly in what way. He wasn't too specific, but how was your interpretation of what he said on that issue?
Look, I mean, it is a very complicated issue. There's no one size fits all response to it, because I mean, you take donations on your
I,
videos,
if they're not required, but people can donate, and I
yeah,
appreciate them. Yep.
and I think it's the same with Sargon. I don't know if Micro accepts donations. Say Mundane Matt as well. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with people charging or people us
Accepting.
accepting donations for the content that they create. If you consume their content, you enjoy it, throw them a couple of bucks. I do have a problem, and I think this is what Internet Aristocrat was talking about, where one of the big things is about what a money-making charlatan Anita Sarkeesian is. She is making a lot of money and producing some fairly iffy content, and then along comes Jordan Owen and Davis Orini, and they're like, "Hey guys, if you give us," I think it was something absurd, like, if you give us $15,000 a month on Patreon, we'll make a documentary. I'm like, how is that really
I
different?
mean,
Like
yeah, yeah.
the business model. I mean, if the problem is that people seem to I identify with them in the same way that the social justice warriors identify with Anita Sarkeesian, and they've given Jordan Owen and Davis Orini this money, and I look at it, and I look at the people giving the money, and I look at the business model and the product that they're offering, and I'm like, how is this radically different from feminist frequency? I think that was what Internet Aristocrat was basically talking about.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you end up with this situation where the guys have some. I mean, just this is one of the things. Like, people were defending Jordan Owen even as the information was coming out that he basically absconded with the money. I think they've got a marriage counselor now, so they've all made up and they're going to finish the film or whatever. But at the time, people were defending Jordan Owen, and it was identity politics again. People had bought the identity of Jordan Owen because they were invested in, like, they had loyalty invested in him. Because if that situation had have been Jonathan McIntosh and Anita Sarkeesian, if they'd raised a whole bunch of money on Patreon to make a documentary, and then they'd had some falling out, and Jonathan McIntosh had run out with all the money, and Anita Sarkeesian was on YouTube making videos about, he's stolen the money. Can you imagine the backlash that would come out of Gamergate about that?
Yeah,
You
be
would
pretty
never
big. Yeah.
you would never hear the end of it. But for some reason, when that happens when that sort of drama comes from Jordan Owen and Davis Orini, everyone starts trying to make excuses for them.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
In exactly the same way that people have on the social justice side have made excuses for Anita Sarkeesian. The fact that, 2 years and $160,000 later, there's still only like what, 5 tropes versus video games videos.
Hmm. I always think about, man, if I had all that money, what I could do with it. The
Well, I
money
mean
she has.
that's the big thing, isn't it? If she really gave a shit about women's depiction in video games for $160,000, she could have actually funded a pretty decent indie game.
Yeah, yeah, probably. But I think, as I said, I mean, she's obviously a
Yeah,
charlatan, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as she has the front of using the front of feminism, it doesn't matter whether she actually represents it or doesn't. She has that front, and so it's pretty much the same
yeah.
thing.
Well, sure. I mean, I guess at this point though, the question is, does is it any like what do you say when people within your own camp use the front of anti-feminism or anti-social justice
Well,
voyeurism to
it
do
depends on what
exactly
you
the
mean by
same
camp. I
thing?
mean, I don't count Aurini, who's a monarchist, or this other guy. I mean, I have not. Just disclaimer: I have nothing to do with these people. Just saying.
No, well, I'm not. I was subscribed to Owen for a little bit, and I got
Mm,
sick of his long-winded rants about how anyone who isn't a Randian objectivist is a moron. So I don't have any investment in either of them either.
all
And
right.
this is one of the things I said to people. I'm coming at this as an outsider, and I'm telling you, it looks just as bad as what feminist frequency does. I'm sort of talking more from
Hmm.
the broad anti-feminist, anti-social justice Gamergate camp as an outside observer who is kind of, I mean, I ostensibly agree with most of what Gamergate is arguing for: journalistic ethics, divulgence of relationships. If you're going to write a review or article on a product by somebody you know, or you're friends with, or you're sleeping with, or whatever, I'm down with all of that. But even to me, who ostensibly agrees with the Gamergate position, I look at the Sarkeesian effect and it just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah. Well, look. Personally, I just don't give a rat's ass about the Sarkeesian effect. But it is interesting to. I would agree with you, I guess, slightly that it's kind of moving in that direction. To me, this is all more of the in arguing with feminists and how many times has Anita Sarkeesian been debunked. My
Yeah.
position is really quite simple. I think that arguing with feminists actually adds fuel to the fire. I mean, this is what they thrive off of. This attention. They need the attention. They want the attention. And people like Orini and Owen and yeah, Sargon as well, and all these people who are throwing them this attention, giving it to them. I mean, they're just creating a perpetual problem.
Yeah.
If they if feminists,
Well,
the counter argument to this, mind you, is that if you don't say anything, they'll just run roughshod over. No, I don't think that's going to happen. If you
they're
don't,
already running roughshod over
exactly. I mean,
everything, even when you
why
do.
not?
I
Why
mean,
not give them less power? I mean, stop listening to them. Why
yeah.
doesn't Sargon start? Excuse me, making videos about history again. Something interesting. Anita Sarkeesian isn't interesting. Chloe, what's her face, isn't interesting. All these names that there's so many now.
Well, the irony of the position of turning the other cheek is that so much of what these people are complaining about, so much of the content they create, whether it's Rebecca Watson and her page of hate, or whether it's Anita Sarkeesian and a, you know, misogyny game campaign against her, it's all about the quote harassment they're getting. If everyone just stopped caring about what these people were
Exactly.
doing, they
I
they
think
would
that's
literally
ultimately why
run out of content.
Mgtow content, however you wish to define that, of course, is thriving, relatively speaking, compared to a lot of
Yeah,
the other things that are just repetitious. I mean, there are new channels popping up. I mentioned, the simian of fecal matter flung. It was positions I don't always agree on, particularly his position
yeah,
on Sandman. But he makes well constructed arguments. There's a lot of that, and
mm,
and I think a lot of that is to do with right now. Actually, folks, as we're speaking, I had a spontaneous idea I started working on today, and I'm working on a video on the origin of violence in relation to conformity within large-scale societies. So be expecting that sometime in the not-too-distant future. But yeah, I think because we just don't care. We just kind of do our own thing. As Barbara has talked about, I mean, it's organic. We're not trying to appeal to someone. I don't expect anyone to necessarily, outside of Mgtow circles, to watch it or appreciate it. If they do, it's nice. If not, whatever. So there's a lot of power, if you will. There's a lot of
Yeah.
goodness to be found in that because of
I
just
mean,
not giving a shit. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, even on that respect, there's the accusations of misogyny and stuff. I mean, I know you've been labelled it a couple of times, but I mean, you've told me, for the most part, the feminists leave you alone.
Yeah,
Your
my
your
theory to
material
that is
overall.
no one wants to wade through an hour and a half. Even a lot of my subs quit. I mean, that video that I thought was really important to make with my friend the biochemist, where
Yeah,
we really qualify what's meant by the self. I think that was really important to talk about.
yeah. But I mean,
But
even then, like, I can't imagine that your average feminist, even if that video was half an hour long, I can't imagine
no,
the
they're not going to
average
wade through that.
feminist is actually going to, well, not even wade through it. I just don't think they're fundamentally interested in
No,
conversations
I
about
think, and I think that's the
free
thing. I
will.
mean, my topics, I do all kinds of topics, and some people appreciate that, some people don't, whatever. But because of that, and because when I do topics that are sort of tangentially related to this gender stuff, they tend to be pretty long and detailed. I mean, they're just, it's hard to extrapolate from that, misogyny, because we have to understand how social media works. It works on buzz phrases and catchphrases and short clips and people's limited attention span. And
Yeah,
my videos don't operate on that principle. So
no,
it's difficult to just say you're a misogynist because I mean, say a feminist watched Escape Velocity, right? They
yeah,
wouldn't. They wouldn't, but let's just say
yeah,
where in the body of that I might have mentioned women once or twice in it. I mean, at this point, I mean, they're just not interested. See, what they're interested in the social media oriented pissing fight, where you have the short attention span, the buzzwords, the
yeah,
catchphrases, the slogans, and if
yeah. Easy things that can be quote mined and then repackaged on Twitter,
pretty much,
which
and
is which is probably half of the reason why Paul Elam conducts himself the way he does, for the attention.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not doing this intentionally. This is just the way I roll. I mean, this is just how I make videos, and some people appreciate it and some people don't. And
Yeah,
either way, it's cool. But so as a consequence, yeah, it's I don't really. I'm kind of under the radar of feminists. It's not because I mean, obviously, I think they're freaking either charlatans and or a bunch of morons. But they just don't. Their world doesn't really concern me because I'm concerned with exploring a different world.
yeah, and I mean
And
that's my thing too. I'm not fundamentally, getting back to the point, feminism, politics, the politics behind feminism. I'm not interested in it. What I'm interested in is the innate nature of the human ape. I'm in it more for because I want to understand how the world works rather than actually changing anything.
yeah, and that's exactly why Karen Strawn. She said this many times. I mean, I guess I am defending her, but this is why she does it. She's trying to understand stuff. Admittedly, she goes about it in a different way than I do and some other people. But yeah, I mean, I can totally applaud that and get behind it because that's what I'm doing basically. I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand the world for myself, and hopefully it benefits other people, other men. But I just don't. I don't see much else to do apart from that because I don't have the power to change the world. And I think all you can do is provide a descriptive model and maybe some interpretations every now and then.
yeah,
Even on a final note, as we wind down towards the end, there's a lot of, for example, there's a lot of stock and hope put in something like male birth control. I don't have much faith in that anyway. For one thing, I probably won't ever have sex again. Probably not. It doesn't really interest me. But as far as the masses are concerned, I just don't think men are gonna get behind something, even if it were available. I just see men, the typical man in particular, just leveraging over the control once again the female. She'll say something like, "Oh, I'll take care of it. Don't worry," and he doesn't want to be bothered. I just don't see this as having the kind of groundbreaking effect that a lot of people do. And I think for all the reasons we've talked about, fixed human nature, the
I
inclination to be deferential towards women, etc.
I have a slightly different opinion. I don't think it's going to drastically change much as far as society is concerned. I think the birth control, like the impact of birth control, the cat's already out of the bag. Like we're
Mm.
already living in post-birth control world. I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to change a lot. I do think that men will be very much in favor of it. Um, I don't think there is many things that a guy wants to hear less than "I'm late," if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, no
Like
doubt. But
if you're planning for a kid, yeah, but if you're not planning for it, it's one of the worst things
yeah,
that a guy can hear.
but Master King Toad Smasher, the fact is, he might not like hearing that, but how does he react when he says, "You're just being selfish. You're not trusting me. You're not." I mean, what does the conventional man do in that situation? Of course, "Oh, I'm sorry, honey. Da 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 da." You know, I'll let you handle it, and then he hears I'm late.
Well,
It's
I don't think it will be a situation. Most guys, it's not talked about a lot, but most guys, most average guys that I have actually asked the question to, would they are they have said if there was a male birth control, I would take it.
yeah, okay.
And I mean, she doesn't even have to know. I mean, it's not her business. You take
True
your
enough.
birth control, she can take hers.
True enough.
Um, I think the issue is, and I mean, this is probably one of those politically incorrect things to say, which is probably not so bad since it's at the end of the video, but I actually think the term unplanned pregnancy or unwanted pregnancy is a somewhat of a misnomer. It's only unplanned for the man. Um,
Mm.
if a pregnancy happens between the pill and IUDs and RU486 and abortions and adoption, women can pretty much abdicate responsibility at any point during a pregnancy.
Mm.
If she chooses to carry it through to term and keep the baby, you know, it's not that those are not unplanned choices for her.
Mm.
The
Yeah, I'm not
guys
disagreeing.
currently don't have that choice. They don't. uh, Unplanned pregnancies are sort of an issue for men, and I think, as I said, I think most men don't want to be hearing, "I need to talk to you. I'm late." Like it's not a thing. I mean, it's essentially at that point, the next sort of 20 years of your life is teetering on the edge of a cliff as to what happens.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think most guys, unless they're actively trying to have a kid with their girlfriend or wife or whatever, I think most guys fundamentally recognize that that's a situation they don't want to be in.
yeah. No, I'm fully aware of that. But but that's an open-ended discussion for another time. And who knows how, if and when that comes, how it'll be reacted to. I
Yeah.
just no, I don't have much faith in humankind to do anything different than they always do. So, no.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be, given that we're already living in post birth control world. I mean, the institution of traditional marriage is pretty much redundant now. Like
Mm.
it's just, as far as the biological drives and the consequences involved in those drives that basically meant you. I mean, back at the turn of the last century, um, marriage was essentially the birth control. It was, don't have sex until you're in a financial position to be able to raise the baby.
Right.
Um, that is no longer the biological state of affairs. Like it's just the marriage as a form of birth control is basically been made redundant. I don't think a male pill is going to radically change
Yeah,
those
yeah,
relationship type things.
yeah. I'd be inclined to agree. Okay, folks. I think we're gonna wrap it up right there. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for a 5% discount on all Mgtow coffee mugs, pencil cases, and t-shirts in the future. And hopefully you'll be listening to another Mgtow Talks in the not-too-distant future. By the way, that advertisement bit, that was a joke, because I know people take me so seriously sometimes. But yeah, thanks for being here, High Lord Cane Toads. Actually, we should, final note, what do I mean by cane toad clubbing or cane toad smashing? Can you explain to the audience? I find it fascinating.
I'm sure this will piss off the animal cruelty people, but
I got some of those, but who cares, man?
There is somewhat of a pastime in North Queensland, well, not even North, even within Brisbane, where people around the late teenage years might go and have a few beers and then take golf clubs out and hit cane toads with them.
Yeah.
Cane toad golfing.
Cane toad golfing. I find this absolutely fascinating. And I said one day I will make a video on the cane toad problem. It is an ecological disaster in Australia for those unaware. But as always, thanks for watching, and we will check you out later. And Coltane might possibly, he has some, well, he hasn't produced it yet, but I've seen some of his forthcoming content, potential content, and it is brilliant. So brace yourself. And as always, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye.